This podcast is part of Mishmash Media. Hey, buddy.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Welcome to another episode of Curbcast. My name is Ivan.
And I'm Stephen.
And this week we are up to episode 4 of season 5 of Curb Your Enthusiasm, Kamikaze Bingo, and every week we get every episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm in chronological order, and we review it scene by scene, give our takes, and maybe, talk about any of our advice in relation to any scenes that pop up or any experiences that we've had. It's, we definitely, we give our take not just on the episode, but maybe like on Larry's actions as well, and what we probably think. So, yeah, it's a bit introspective as well.
Yeah, we relate it to things that have happened to us, or maybe some hypotheticals, how we deal with situations. And usually it's the opposite of how Larry deals. So that seems to be the common consensus.
Yes, and you guys seem to enjoy that from what we've been told from you. So That's awesome.
If you want to contact us, you can email us at curbcastpod@gmail.com. We're on all forms of social media as well. We've got a Reddit account, Twitter, Facebook. Our handle on all of those is curbcastpod. If you want to support us, you can. It would be awesome if you could rate us or review us on your podcast app of choice. It really helps with visibility. It increases our placement in the search results and helps with the algorithm and helps spread the word. Or if you just want to tell a friend or someone you know who might like Curb or even Seinfeld, that would be awesome too. You can support us financially too. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/mishmash media. And for as little as $1 a month, you can support our burgeoning podcast network. And there will be some extra content coming out later this year. We are in the process of getting all of that together and building out the network. So if you want to get in on the ground floor, that would be awesome. And finally, we do have a Facebook group as well, the Curb Your Enthusiasm fan club. There's about 3,500 Curb fans on there. So if you want to join the fun, memes, Curb references, etc., check it out.
Indeed. It's slowly growing, slowly but surely. And we're getting more people every week, which is great.
That's it.
Anyway, bud, let's get into it. A very funny episode, Kamikaze Bingo. Probably one of my favorites from season 5. I know we've only done 4 episodes, but it's definitely in my top 2. This one's very, very, very good. But anyway, let's get into the episode. Kamikaze Bingo aired in the US on October 16th, 2005. In this one, Larry offends a Japanese art dealer named Yoshi by implying that his father was not a real kamikaze pilot. Later on, Larry accuses his own dad's retirement home of fixing their bingo game, because we find out in this episode, Steve, that Larry is a bingo expert. Basically, he's he wins all the time.
Yeah, he's a bingo gun. Bingo is not a game of skill, so I don't know how you can be good at it or bad at it. So it's just pure luck. But yeah. Whatever wins Larry can get.
Yeah, it's basically gambling, and it's mostly luck, isn't it? Not really skill.
Yeah, I mean, even gambling can have some skill because you can, like say poker, that requires a lot of skill, even though a lot of it's out of your hands, so to speak. But bingo is just purely based on, it's like the lottery. You can't increase or decrease your chances to win. It's totally random.
Yeah. Isn't it with bingo you get given your card, or do you pick the numbers? Do you know? Or
I think you just get... I've played bingo a few times, and I think you just get given the sheet. The only time it may come down to skill is if you respond, if both you and someone else are on the last number and it gets called, and if you respond quicker than them, that I guess is a bit of skill. You've got to be onto it a bit faster.
Almost like Uno.
Yeah. I mean,
if you have the last card.
That's really the only scenario in bingo that I can see that would come down to skill, and that would just be being a second or two faster than the other person and calling bingo before they do.
Yeah. Cool. Well, fair. Well, apparently, according to Larry, there's a bit of fixing going on, match fixing.
Yeah, I mean,
bingo.
I guess in this scenario, Larry probably would be better at bingo because he's probably a bit more with it, and he's probably got some better hearing going on. So
which is demonstrated in this episode.
Yeah, and I guess he's got
in that scene where Larry's dad's watching the porno and full blast. No one can hear it, though.
Yeah, I guess he's got a bit of an edge over the older folks because they probably miss some numbers and don't really know what's going on half the time. So that's not really skill. That's just when he was born.
And he's got another 30 years left of life compared to them too.
Yeah.
So that's a big advantage.
Yeah.
All right, mate, let's get into it. Kamikaze Bingo. So it's an amalgamation of 2 situations in the episode. Good name for the episode, isn't it?
Yeah, no, funny.
Yes. First scene, Larry is at a Japanese restaurant and is greeted comedically by the chefs. They call him Chicken Teriyaki Boy, and they do like a chicken dance when they see him. He sits down where Cheryl and a man named Yoshi are sitting. Larry is impressed with Yoshi's bow. Cheryl praises Yoshi's sculptures, and Larry jokes if he has a sculptured penis, and he points out an engravement Kofi is here on the table where they're sitting. Larry says his dad and Yoshi's dad, I think Tanaka his name was, are becoming good friends in the nursing home. Yoshi says that he took his dad to Japan to see his war buddies, and he claims that his father was a kamikaze pilot. Larry asks if he actually just would be dead if he's a kamikaze pilot, because it was a suicide mission. Yoshi said that not all of them died. Larry still questions this as kamikazes usually die, and he asks if his dad hit the ship. Yoshi says in his words that his dad grazed the ship as Larry keeps probing him. It's all semantics with this guy. Cheryl and Yoshi try to deflect from the conversation as the waiter comes to take their order, and Larry, of course, orders the chicken teriyaki. So, yeah, I mean, Larry, look, I understand, like, you know, studying World War II, as a teenager in high school and, doing, like, watching more documentaries and reading books in later life, learning about World War II, we did read a lot about Pearl Harbor and, the kamikaze pilots and stuff. And kamikaze is associated with, like, a suicide mission. So, I could imagine it would be, there wouldn't be many living kamikaze pilots. I could imagine most of them would maybe they ate something funny the day before and felt sick and had to stay at base or something. I mean, I could imagine, like some points that Larry makes. Yeah, but you don't hear too much about living kamikaze pilots. So, I can't understand where Larry's coming from, but I think he's kind of, I don't know, he's a bit too insensitive and he's not receptive to how Yoshi's feeling about it.
Yeah, totally. I think he's technically correct. I'm sure I don't know, I'm not really a World War II buff, but I'm sure there were a few surviving kamikaze pilots. Maybe they pulled away or they didn't die by accident or by chance, I should say. I don't know, but I'm sure the majority of them did die because that was their mission, that was their orders, and that's what they volunteered for. So, but Larry is technically correct. Like, is he a kamikaze pilot if he just grazed the ship? Because that doesn't sound accidental. That sounds like maybe he dove to commit suicide and then pulled up as he was, he second guessed his commitment, and he pulled up and maybe under the plane, like, grazed the ship or something like that. He pulled away.
Yeah.
I don't know. So Larry's technically correct. It's like, is he a kamikaze pilot? But the way he's going about it it's obviously a sensitive topic in general. So just the probing questions just make it more and more awkward. He could raise the point with Cheryl in private, but to raise it with the grandson of
with the son, sorry, with Yoshi's son, I should say. Yeah,
of a war veteran is just deeply disrespectful. So
yeah, it is. Yeah, I wouldn't say anything. Like,
no.
I'd just be like, okay, no problem.
No.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, very insensitive. And Larry later, it's like in the episode, is still like questioning it, and he's talking to other people about it, which we'll mention a bit later. He can't quite get it out of his mind.
No, he's always got to be validated. He can't just let things go.
That's right. I know. Oh well, that's him.
Wow.
Yes. What did he do in the war?
He was a pilot.
Really? What kind of a pilot?
Kamikaze pilot.
Wow.
Wow.
Wouldn't he be dead?
Not all of them died.
I know, a kamikaze pilot, it kind of implies that, a kamikaze pilot is a pilot who crashed and died, right?
But he didn't.
He survived.
In the next scene, Larry is playing poker at their friend Kev's house with Jeff and his other buddies. There's about, I think, 6 of them or something, 5 or 6 of them.
5 or 6, yeah.
And and Larry tells them about his private investigator, Omar, from last episode. One of the boys asks about Richard Lewis. Larry says that he needs a new kidney, which, we find out in the next episode. That goes into more detail in episode 5 of Curb. Larry wins the latest hand as Yoshi's sister Miyuki, who's one of the wives, or Kev's wife, the householders, comes out with refreshments. They all ask if Yoshi is coming to play. Miyuki says that he should be here soon. Larry says he's going to play bingo with his dad at the nursing home tomorrow. And as he talks about it, the phone rings and Kev gets an emergency call saying that Yoshi tried to take his life. As he and his wife abruptly leave to go to the hospital, the rest of the gang look on in shock. Larry recounts that he saw Yoshi last night, and they all wonder why he may feel that way. And instead of, rushing to the hospital or, seeing how their friend's doing, they continue to play poker instead of going to see their friend in need. So, yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a touchy one. Like, I mean, there's only so much you can do, like, if a friend, tried doing that. But then again, like, Miyuki and Kev, like, in the gang's defense, they left the door unlocked, and they don't have any keys. So I can kind of see where they're coming from, sort of. I mean, I might sound a bit insensitive, but I mean, what's your take on that?
I think they probably could have just left one person there just to keep an eye on the house, and then the other 4 could have gone to the hospital. I think that would have been appreciated, where it's like, well, yes, I understand one of you had to stay here for the security of the house, and whoever volunteered for that just couldn't make it to the hospital. I think you could have ticked both off.
Yeah, but they just all wanted to keep playing.
Yeah, I mean, they were concerned about their, about the situation, and they were concerned about the security of the house. Like, they brought it up and talked about it, but ultimately they just wanted to get on with the poker. They talked themselves out of doing the right thing for the sake of poker. Yeah. That was their ultimate ultimate, that's what they really wanted.
Yeah, and something very refreshing, which we'll talk about, very shortly, but something very refreshing. Larry doesn't actually come up with the idea. It's almost like a collective idea. Like they try and find excuses to stay in the house. So, it seems to me like, number one, they still want to play poker. Number two, they're not as close to Yoshi as obviously Kevin and Mayuki. So they probably don't really know the guy too much. They probably, maybe met him a couple of times. It sounds like he's more of like a distant acquaintance to the gang.
Yeah, Larry is usually, well, more often than not, the instigator in these sort of more awkward situations. He's the person willing to say, I guess, the quiet part out loud, and try and convince other people to go along with it. But yeah, it's interesting that he was just a participant rather than the instigator.
Yeah, and a montage plays out. A montage plays out of all the boys having fun as Kev returns. He's shocked that they're all still playing, even though Yoshi is in the hospital, and he kicks everyone out. Larry asks Kev if Larry's name was mentioned, but Kev says he has tubes coming out of his mouth and can't talk. So I actually found it really refreshing that it wasn't just Larry who gets chastised for something like this, because in previous episodes, we have seen it's just Larry who's been, like you said, like the instigator, and then he gets in trouble individually. But him, Jeff, and the others all get in equal strife and they're kicked out. So I thought it was quite refreshing.
Yeah. I mean, if Larry was the instigator, if they all dobbed on him and said, well, it was just Larry's idea and we complied, he would have gotten the most flack. But because they were all complicit more or less equally, they all received an equal amount of blame and frustration. I would be interested to know, though, if they all did go to the hospital, whether they would be considered an inconvenience if they were there, like, go away, this is a private matter. So maybe for them that's part of their thinking as well, that, well, if we all went there during a really, really touch and go situation where, none of us are really close with anyone involved, would we be a burden if just 4 or 5 randoms just sort of turned up? Like, it's a nice thing to do, but would they be told to sort of leave because it's just too much?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you've got to have like the immediate family there first.
Yeah. I mean, there's always a middle ground. They could have just gone to the waiting room. They didn't have to obviously go to the actual room where it was all happening. They could have I just think they didn't think it through properly. They didn't think of many other options. It was either, well, we either go to the hospital, all of us, or we stay home. They could have, a couple of them could have gone to the hospital, or they could have called and checked like an hour later and just said, oh, look, we discussed whether we should go or whether we should stay here. We thought it might be best to give you your time and your privacy, and we're just staying here, for the security of your house. I think that would have relieved a lot of the tension, rather than just spend 1 minute deciding on the options and then going, we'll just stay and play poker. Yeah, it was mostly thoughtless.
There was a pizza coming though.
Yeah, actually, that's true. They didn't want the pizza to go cold.
Yeah, I love when the pizza's just there and it's like half open by the time Kev comes back.
Yeah.
That's great. Actually, I actually appreciate the fact that they made it so all the gang is collectively responsible for it. I think it would have been a bit stupid. Like, look, we've seen Larry be the instigator of many situations, willingly or unwillingly. And, shit, hits the fan for him and he gets in trouble or whatever. But I appreciate the fact that they actually just, everyone was responsible for it. I think it would have been a bit silly if like everyone was like, oh, Larry convinced us, we should all stay home. And Larry was the one that thought of this, everyone's staying here. I don't know. I think it would have come off a little bit unrealistic as well.
Well, it was from a plot point of view as well. It was unnecessary because we soon discover that Larry's already receiving the most flack because of his disrespectful discussion about kamikaze pilots. So he's already going to be the focus of all the anger anyway. So there's no point giving anyone else another reason to be concentrating on him, because it's going to happen anyway based on the opening scene.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, no, you're right. It isn't needed, and I'm glad that the writers went in that direction.
Yeah, obviously, it's a collective decision as well, because you're having fun. They're probably half drunk, having a good time with their friends. Their hair's down. They're letting loose. So they're all kind of on the same page. It's not they all equally want to keep playing poker. So equally they want to sort of do as little as possible to comfort their friend.
Yeah. For sure. They want to just, try and enjoy it as well and do as little as they can.
Yeah. I don't think they actually seriously considered going to the hospital. I think it was just them trying to convince themselves that the right thing to do was to stay away. And, the excuse of staying for security is not totally irrelevant, but pretty lame.
And obviously with Kev's, trauma, maybe in the moment, if he was more rational and, stuff, he would have said, I understand. But in that moment, when people are grieving or, things are happening to a loved one, you can kind of, your thoughts can kind of go a bit differently and, you could be a bit, you could sound a little bit irrational.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously a touch and go situation. Like I said, people are leading with their emotions, but the emotions weren't shared by the rest of the gang. I think it was more just, well, what should we do? We'll just stay and play poker because that's the right thing to do. They convinced themselves of what they wanted to do anyway. It was going to
And
come.
the pizza was coming, like I said.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah. I just have one more note about this scene before we jump to the next one. This is the only time we see Jeff in this episode.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah. It's like the least amount of Jeff we've seen.
Yeah, usually, I mean, there's been a few episodes that he hasn't been in, but usually when he is in an episode, he's probably the most prominent secondary character other than Cheryl. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. I guess they probably just didn't really need him for the rest of the story.
No, I mean, there's a lot going on anyway, so kind of he's unnecessary.
Yeah, I know. I just found it really interesting.
Yeah, no, good point.
Larry and Cheryl are talking about Yoshi the next day, and Larry wonders how she knows about it. She says that she received a suicide email from him. Cheryl says the email is private and that Yoshi sent it to the people that he wanted to see. Larry keeps pushing to find out what is in the email as he tries to grab Cheryl's laptop from her. And they're in bed, actually. I forgot to mention, yeah, they're in bed at home. So, yeah, I love that last part where Larry's trying to grab the laptop from Cheryl and she's just like struggling to hold onto it. It's pretty good physical comedy. But suicide email, I mean, we have heard of suicide notes and stuff before, but suicide email, you can tell, like, this is like very early 2000s, isn't it? You know, like, they talk about like emails, and later on we find out about suicide Blackberries as well. Yeah. It's definitely like early to mid 2000s kind of comedy.
Yeah, and I think they're setting up the suicide email, as a comedic touch point because it kind of like, it's so impersonal. A suicide note, although very grim and very sad, is a very personal thing. It's like a letter versus an email in a way, where it's like an email is so, there's no humanity attached to an email, I guess. Like, I'm sure the words were obviously very personal and intense, but just the fact that it's an email kind of takes any sting, I guess, or any significance out of a suicide note, which is a handwritten thing, of someone telling people why they made that decision. Yeah. I guess the benefit over an email, though, is if you want to tell individual people individual things, it's easier than, writing them all a bunch of letters. And, a suicide note's not going to if you write like an individual paragraph for an individual person in a long suicide note or a suicide letter, it's not going to be handed around so everyone can read it. So I kind of, from a practical point of view, if you've got personal messages to deliver before you make that decision, it makes sense. But, I guess the joke is that it's so, emails are so cold,
yes.
Whereas letters are considered warm and intimate, and a suicide note is obviously a lot more personal as opposed to just an email. So I think that's what they're going for, as well as the BlackBerry. It's like,
as well as that as well.
This sort of like innocuous, cold, impersonal technology becoming just a convenient way to communicate something so overwhelmingly intense and bleak.
You got it.
I think that's kind of what they were going for.
You got it. Yeah, I agree 100%. But yeah, the great thing is about like the email as well. A thing that I really appreciate with Larry David in Seinfeld and in Curb as well. You don't see the contents of the letter.
No,
there's always like that open for a lot of like Seinfeld and Curb. A lot of that open interpretation. I love that about Larry David's writing.
Well, yeah, I think it would become like Curb relies upon finding the sort of more ridiculously comical, almost surreal aspects in really intense topics and situations, and almost trivializing them to the point of it's like semi-surrealist comedy in a way. But by showing the notes, by showing that note or showing things, it not only takes away the ability for the viewer to add their own interpretation, but add their own words or, whatever's not being seen. But it kind of I just think it would just take it too far into the bleak. Oh my God, this is horrible. Like it would be too much. It would be too far.
Yeah. It'd be too far, yeah.
Do you think, a topic that they've explored, I think on Curb and on Seinfeld is, like privilege, like access to privileged information when you're with, when you're with your husband or wife? Like if I was told a secret, does my spouse or your spouse or anyone's spouse, do they deserve unfettered access to that information just by the fact that they're married to them? It's a common thing. Like, I've told people, secrets or shared personal information. And in my mind, I've thought, well, even if I've said to them, please keep this to yourself, I've automatically assumed they'll probably tell it to their wife or their husband or, their significant other. Yeah. Unless it's really, really personal. And I've like explicitly said, don't even share this with your spouse. It's kind of a given that's from my point of view. So do you think Cheryl was correct in terms of for keeping Larry away from the suicide email? It's so weird saying suicide.
Well, I actually feel like, because we find out in a later scene, well, Larry asks Yoshi, when we get to the scene with the pistachios, was I mentioned in the email, and doesn't answer. I feel like he was probably mentioned in the email. And I think Cheryl, to save face for her husband, didn't want him to see it.
Yeah,
That's what I
actually,
think it
yeah,
is.
it probably would have, yeah, actually, that's a really good point. It probably would have escalated it. Like if she said that Larry was mentioned in the email, Larry probably would have kicked off and gone, well, and tried to absolve himself from creating the situation where he felt the need to commit suicide.
And then he'd go on a rant about kamikaze pilots and
Yeah, it just would have added
yeah,
to the fire. So I think
yeah.
actually that's a really good point.
Yeah, and I think suicide, it's a pretty tricky one to make fun of, like in comedy.
Yeah.
Like you got to kind of find a balance. I feel like if they focused too much on the suicide email and that became like a MacGuffin in the plot line, I think it probably would have been a bit, even at the time, a bit controversial as well. And I think they probably would have gone. I think the writing would have really been more muddled down, and it wouldn't have been as good of an episode. I think the fact just leaving it as the mystery and implying or theorizing that Cheryl is just holding it, to save face, because she knows that Larry's name's on there, but she doesn't want to say anything because she likes Yoshi. Yeah, I think we could just leave that at bay. You know what I mean? I think that's probably enough to tie up that plot line.
True.
Yeah, I know, that's just me. I mean, what do you think?
No, I think that's pretty good. They don't really concentrate too much on the content of the suicide email. It's just the fact that it's a suicide email as opposed to a letter or a note. It's the method of delivery rather than what was delivered.
Yeah, that's the comedy of it. And then especially like suicide BlackBerry later on.
Yeah,
it's like basically a text message.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're right. It's just like cold technology, which has these like warm words attached to it.
Yeah, I mean, and I can relate in a way, like obviously not specific, not a one for one, but previous to my now fiance, my last relationship, I was broken up with by email, and it was brutal. So
yeah, that is brutal.
Yeah, but saying that though, I requested that because it was I won't go into details too much because
no,
I do value some privacy, and I'm sure the other person does too. But we were in a long distance relationship, and we actually said, well, neither one of us want to move me to her country and her to Australia. There's a good chance that, well, there isn't a good chance, but there is a chance that we may break up with one another from another country. How do we do this? I'm not going to fly to where she was living just to break up with her, and I wouldn't expect her to come here. So it's got to be over the phone or a message or an email. It was like, well, we got to get practical about this difficult decision. And me flippantly thinking, well, we're not going to break up anyway, because, you don't think that when you're in a relationship, unless it's like on its way out. I said, well, just send me an email. Just do it by email.
Right.
Thinking that it's a moot point anyway, because it's not going to happen. And then at some point later on, I open my inbox and there it was. So
there it was, and then you were shocked.
Yeah, so it was still cold and shocking, but at the same time, I said that's how I want to be broken.
You asked for it.
I asked for it.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Again, not one for one with Cheryl receiving Yoshi's email, but to have such a personal, intimate, like intense situation delivered. So in the same method that you get like receipts for PayPal payments or your latest electricity bill delivered to you is it's a strange feeling.
It is, yeah. it's very odd, yeah. But I guess that's where the humor came from for the email in this episode.
Totally.
Yeah. But I get what you mean. Yeah, receiving like personal stuff in like like non-handwritten form. Yeah, it can be a bit jarring.
Yeah.
And it's not the first time that Yoshi does this. Anyway, we'll talk about that a bit later. At the bingo hall the next day, Larry is having a good time as someone nearby, a lady named Ruthie, tells him that he is too loud. Larry calls bingo as the bingo checker goes to have a look at the numbers. She says she never called the number I-17, even though we hear that she actually did. She calls Larry a cheat. He asks if he can see her pad, and she says no. The lady Ruthie cajoles Larry about his cheating, and she calls bingo a couple of numbers later as Larry gets annoyed. So Larry, he had allegedly had all the numbers, and we do hear that I-17 was called. Steve, that was the number, but we find out later on that most of the residents have a hearing issue.
Yeah, I think Larry, even though he made a mistake in this situation where he thought a number that was called wasn't called. I think he's so convinced that he will win, because he probably normally does when he goes along, that it's almost like the idea of him not winning or making a mistake is almost like shocking to him. He's like, hang on a minute, like, because I clean up every episode. Oh, sorry, every time I go to bingo, the idea of me making a mistake is almost impossible, even though he did.
Yeah. And he's like, it's like he's an expert in bingo. And even he's stunned. It'd be like, Tiger Woods when, in the peak, everyone's expecting him to win, but then he just loses.
Yeah, if Tiger Woods
feel
made
like
a mistake, or if I guess maybe it's more akin to a game where there's an umpire, where there's a third party who can judge whether there's a cheat or not. Sometimes you see tennis players do it where they're, like say for example Novak Djokovic, like best, the top of their game sort of thing, and they're so confident in their ability to win because they usually do, that if they make a mistake or if there's a call made that they think was a mistake, if it was out rather than in, they're so in the mindset of I deserve to win because I am a champion, that the idea of them, a call being made against them, even if it was correct, or them making a mistake is almost incomprehensible because they're so confident and they're so focused on winning because they normally do. But it usually proves, if you look at tennis, if the replay is shown, most of the time the umpires are correct. The player's point of view isn't as good as the umpire that's sitting in the high chair, and they're just not as experienced as calling line shots and stuff like that. So that's kind of what it reminded me of, where Larry's just so confident at winning because he normally does, that the idea of him making a mistake and mishearing a number, or just being wrong, is almost,
it's just not right.
He can't even get his head around it. He's like, well, no, this can't be right because I normally win. What are you talking about? Obviously you're cheating.
Yeah, but we heard the number. We heard I-17.
Yeah, but he didn't.
Yeah.
And
no, he didn't know.
Yeah, he didn't. And rather than just accept that, oh shit, maybe I just didn't hear it, or maybe I misheard it, obviously you're cheating. It's not me. It's not my hearing. It's you. Because I can't.
It's the system that's wrong, right?
How can I lose? How can I lose? Because I'm normally the champion. That's it's just an inability to accept that you made a mistake because normally you win.
Yes, and Ruthie comes back and she's very happy with her win.
Yeah.
It's her $1 or $2, whatever the prize money is.
It's probably extra sweet because, like I said, I would assume that Larry, he's an experienced bingo player. So whether he's gained that experience through going, to play bingo with his dad and all the other old folks, for every week or so before this, or whether he's just accumulated that experience over life. I think just say he's played it for a year before this and he's won pretty much every game, or every time he's gone. I think that would make him losing extra sweet, because it's like, finally I've beat the undisputed champion.
Yeah, finally I beat him. And plus, Larry was annoying Ruthie for being too loud as well. So it makes it just as sweet for her.
I think so. Yeah, it's like finally I've won. Like finally
I won. I just love how Larry is like a pro at something where it's more luck than skill. I don't know. It's like getting lottery tickets or scratchy cards, and you win like $2 every time. On the scratchies, and you're like, I'm a pro. I always make at least half my money back on scratchy. You know what I mean?
That's the only way someone like Larry. I mean, he's obviously really good at, he's good at comedy, he's good at writing. Like, he's successful at his chosen field, and he's smart, and he's intelligent and witty. Like, it's not like he's a total failure as a person.
No, of course. No, he's very successful.
The only way that he can win in a competitive environment is by having a massive advantage, in this case, an age advantage over all of the other competitors. Yeah, like that's the only way he would win. Like, if you matched up Larry with people of equal age and physical ability, he would probably never win, or win rarely. So the only way he can be a champion or be an expert is by having a 20 or 30 year age advantage and competent hearing. So
it's the only way he can do it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like playing basketball when there's like under 10s. Like, Larry will be like, yes, Kramer. I can kick all their asses.
It's like,
I'll kick Kramer and judo.
But he's fighting. Yeah. You put Kramer against other 6'2" lanky grown men who are of equal skill, and he'd probably get his ass kicked.
Yeah. It's like when he does judo with them.
Yeah, in karate.
Karate. Oh, that's right, karate. Yes, of course, not judo.
So, that's what it reminds me of. It's like, that's the only way Larry can win, is because he's got a very, very significant unfair advantage on many fronts.
Yeah, I love if he goes for like a middle-aged competition. Let's see how
exactly. Like, if everyone, or if he had the same hearing difficulties as the others, I think he would win a lot less.
I think so too.
Lenore's the checker.
Lenore, check this out,
Bingo.
Lenore.
Watch.
Let's see it, okay? Okay, I'm sorry, sir. I did not call I-17.
What are you talking
No,
about?
I never did.
I-7, yeah,
That
I-17.
is not correct. I did not call
excuse
an
me.
I-17.
Excuse me.
Ha, 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 ha. Cheat.
Larry greets Yoshi's father in the reception area, or the lounge area at the nursing home, and Mayuki and Kev are there as well. Larry is happy that Yoshi is at home, as they all look very solemn. Kev talks to Larry in private and tells him not to pretend to be concerned about Yoshi. Larry justifies the group's actions as a show of solidarity for Yoshi, i.e. all of them playing poker. Kev says Larry is the reason for Yoshi trying to kill himself. There we go. So we find out in this scene that's the case, and we can deduce that he also wrote that in the suicide suicide email, Steve.
Yeah, I think I didn't pick up that implication, but it's got to be there.
It's got to be there, yeah. Well, I feel like it's probably not the reason. I feel like Yoshi was probably already a depressed person, and I feel like maybe that kind of pushed him over the edge, you know?
I mean, I don't know whether it's real or just stereotypical, but I do know that, you know, shame and honor in Japanese culture is really, really, really powerful.
Oh, that's what I was thinking, actually. I was going to mention it before, yeah.
So I think the idea of Larry highlighting what Yoshi perceives as his father's shame was really the only reason I don't think Larry's point about him not really being a true kamikaze pilot tipped him over the edge. I think that was the whole reason. Because it
was shame. Yeah, right.
It's not just I'm depressed and now my father's, you know, like what's the word? Legacy has
my father's been dishonored. His legacy has been dishonored.
It's dishonor. I think that carries a huge weight, and it's not suicide based on depression. I think in Japanese culture, it's suicide based on dishonor.
On dishonor. I get your point. Okay.
It's like when Ronin and who are ninjas without a clan. You know, if they've been banished from their clan for breaking a rule or doing something, and they're rogue ninjas, they're called Ronins.
Yes.
And usually, the only way to regain honor is seppuku, which is the process where they fall on their sword. You know, that's considered the only way to regain honor after being dishonored so much of being kicked out of a clan. Obviously, this is not as intense. You know, he's not falling on his sword, on his samurai sword.
No.
I think it's the same idea where that shame is so deep, even though it wasn't his, that the only way to regain honor or to, you know, pay back what he now perceives as his father's shame is to do that.
Oh, I see your point. Yeah. Look, I was thinking that before, but I didn't want to like say anything because I didn't want to come off as like culturally like insensitive or anything. But no, you've explained it eloquently. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
And look, maybe that's not much of a thing anymore. Maybe it's a bit more of a stereotype than real. Maybe it doesn't really translate to modern Japanese culture or even, you know, Japanese people living in other countries. Like Yoshi seems very Americanized.
Yes.
You know, maybe that doesn't hold as much weight, but that was my perception that, you know, he was atoning for what he now perceives as his father's shame. Especially, and it's not like his father just did something wrong when he was a younger man. It's not like he, I don't know, had an affair or, you know, the shame of being I guess you would say a failed kamikaze pilot, I think would be the deepest form of shame, because being a kamikaze pilot, I think, was perceived to be as honorable as you could get. You know, so he's done something against the most honorable commitment you can make. So it's like an extra...
Well, commitment at the time in Imperial Japan, but yes.
Yeah, obviously. But, you know, I think in wartime Japan, by volunteering to be a kamikaze pilot was considered the greatest honor and the greatest show of bravery. So the fact that he didn't complete that task adds to what is already a shameful act.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Now you've explained it well. Yeah, that adds some more dimensions to Yoshi then.
Yeah.
Like I said, Kev says Larry is the reason for Yoshi trying to take his life. Larry questions how someone can still be alive after being a kamikaze pilot. I love when Larry's like, what, you think he just flies down the ship? And he says, fuck this. And he just grazes the ship and flies off.
Look, I'm sure if you...
I just love Larry's explanation. He's like, fuck this. He's like, you just go down. He's like, fuck this. And he just fly off.
Look, I wouldn't... I've never been in a war, and being a kamikaze pilot or being, you know, committing suicide in the name of your country is not really part of, Australian culture.
Who knows, Steve? We might get called up to fight Russia.
True. Yeah.
If Putin goes more into the Ukraine.
Maybe. Yeah. True.
All for the war effort.
Yeah, I'll just mock them with my terrible Russian accent. I won't actually fire a gun or do anything on the ground. I'll just be I'll be used in like propaganda efforts to to sort of diminish their morale by mocking their comical accents.
You can just hack them.
Oh yeah, true. I could do that.
You know, with your cybersecurity skills.
That's true. Yeah.
Just hack their database.
I'll hack the mainframe.
Nice. You'll have like a picture of Putin like wearing a dress or something.
Yeah.
I'll
deface their website,
like a can or something.
Yeah, I'll deface their websites. I'll
do like they did with that Craig Kelly politician.
Yeah, exactly.
That MP from Australia whose website got hacked because his domain expired, and there's all these photoshopped images of him in uncompromised positions.
Yeah, some cyber troll. I can't remember his name, but he's got a history of just sort of mocking politicians, and I think he's a, what do they call it, a domain sitter or a domain camper or something like that.
Right.
And just, you know, he keeps an eye on domains, and when they expire, he swoops in and buys them. So he actually bought the domain. I don't think the website was hacked.
An independent right-wing politician from Australia.
Yeah, he replaced the official website with his own website that's just full of mocking and satire and stuff. So
that's what you'll do.
Yeah, I'll join the Ukrainian propaganda effort and eliminate, Russian morale by defacing their websites. Typical stuff.
Nice. I can't wait.
Information warfare, hybrid warfare, I think they're calling it.
That's how World War III is going to go, my man. It's all going to be online.
It's turn the tide.
It's all going to be digital. Not a bullet. No bullets will be fine.
Probably not.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
No. Kev continues to claim that Larry called Yoshi a chicken, but Larry says he orders chicken and Yoshi misunderstood. And he accuses Kev of stealing Larry's chips as he was up $300 before he was asked to leave. Larry says he will call Yoshi at the request of Kev. Larry calls Yoshi to apologize on his dad's phone as he's eating pistachios. Yoshi asks why he's eating while he's apologizing. Larry says it's fine. I love when Yoshi gets upset about this and Larry's like, what, is not eating on the phone a Japanese thing? And Yoshi goes, no, it's a human thing. Yeah. He makes a good point. Yeah. You're not supposed to eat when you apologize, you moron, Larry.
Yeah, it's a weird, I don't know, there's no set rule against it, or there's no set like societal expectation against it, but it just kind of, it diminishes the seriousness of it. You know, it's casually eating is something you do when you're just on a 2-hour phone call with your mate, just chatting shit about whatever. You know, you might be eating chips or halfway through lunch or something. But when you make a very, very serious phone call to to a person in a very, very serious situation, it should just be about it just trivializes it to the point of almost being, almost making it count for nothing. Even though Larry said the right words and he probably does mean it, just hearing the crunching sound, it's distracting of the really important message that he's trying to say to him.
Yeah, it is. It is. No, he definitely, especially with this kind of very sensitive topic, he shouldn't have done that.
No.
And even worse, as we find out later, peeling the shells and eating the pistachios is worse.
Yeah, because he's not just focused on apologizing. His mind's in two places. He's like, well, I'm going to eat and apologize, and it just takes any seriousness or solemnness out of the words.
Yes. And to finish the scene, Yoshi gets upset about this as Larry asks if he was mentioned in the suicide email. Yoshi hangs up. Larry walks through the reception area of the nursing home to meet Dr. Skaden. Was it Skaden? Dr. Skaden?
Just call him Dr. S.
Dr. S, there we go. Yeah, he meets Dr. S in the foyer. He says that he is ordering blood thinners for his dad. Larry tells the doctor about the rigged bingo game and if he can go investigate. Dr. S is bemused by this claim. Larry suggests he sit in on a game to watch if it's rigged, and Dr. S, he's not really interested. He says nonchalantly that he'll look into it as he walks off. So Larry's trying to explain that bingo could be fixed, and Dr. S is just he's just kind of putting on a facade to make it look like he might be half interested, but you can tell he's just blank. It's just like, Larry, come on.
Yeah, he's humoring him.
Yeah, he is. And Dr. X is a pretty level-headed kind of guy too. So he's got a very dry personality. So he doesn't see the humor in it.
Yeah, he's just sort of like, what are you talking about, Larry? Like this, just take a step back and look at what you're claiming. Like, even if there was cheating, this is retirement home bingo. This is not a serious sport or anything.
That's right. Yeah. He just calmed down and everyone's like, well, what's the prize? Like $2, $5.
Yeah, exactly. The stakes aren't very high here. Just chill out a bit. There are more important things.
Exactly. Especially like his the residents' health, which he monitors. I think that's a lot more important.
Yeah, exactly.
The livelihoods of all these seniors.
Yeah, and I mean, you think there'd be a better person to ask. There'd probably be a more suitable person other than the doctor, whose, like you said, prime responsibility is to make sure that all of his patients are healthy. They could,
or at least living their best lives.
Exactly. Making their lives as easy as possible. Yeah, I mean, you could talk to the manager or just one of the staff, like, hey, keep an eye on it. Like, the doctor is a bit, he's got enough on his plate.
He's got enough. But I think they just wanted to establish the prescription because in the next scene, the prescription becomes like the, another plot point in this episode.
Yeah.
Larry heads to the chemist. He hands in his dad's prescription to the pharmacist. The pharmacist recommends another drug which is better than what the doctor ordered. Larry says that the doctor prefers this drug. The pharmacist prefers the other one. Larry is wondering which person to go with. He goes, doctor, pharmacist, doctor, or the pharmacist. And eventually he decides to go with the pharmacist. He heads back to the home to get a new prescription from the doctor. And what a terrible call by Larry. Like, I had to think about this when I watched the episode and I was doing my notes. And I'm like, the pharmacist doesn't know the patient. They don't know the patient's body. They don't know what they could be allergic to. They don't know, if this medicine will counteract with another one. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the doctor's decision always goes first. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, pharmacists are qualified medical professionals, but I would, pharmacists usually follow the doctor's lead. They might, have their opinion or have their take, but, doctors are considered the pointy end of the spear. And then in any medical, anything dispensed medically after the doctor's advice is, usually follows from their diagnosis and recommendation. And look, even if I'm sure there has been a situation where a pharmacist disagrees with the doctor.
Might have been, yeah. Or maybe like they've been prescribed certain drugs, and then maybe like one drug, mixed with the other one won't, will cause a reaction or something. Maybe he's like, "Oh, hold up."
Yeah, and it's good. It's good to it's good that there's healthy debate amongst the medical community, especially amongst different professions. But I think a better way to handle it is to just dispense the medication that the doctor's prescribed. And if it's an ongoing prescription, the pharmacist can find out who the doctor is or would know who the doctor is. And,
only across the road.
Professionally. Say, look, and just discuss it with him personally. Raise it professionally. Don't just override his diagnosis in front of Larry and create the situation.
Exactly, because the pharmacist doesn't know the doc, doesn't know the patient, doesn't know the body,
exactly.
doesn't know what they're doing.
To discuss it, and maybe a professional discussion about what they're what he disagrees about. The doctor would take on board and either accept it or decline it or think about it again. Maybe they could come to an even better diagnosis because you've got two heads over one. I just think to just object to it in front of Larry when Larry is the patient. Larry is the one who has to take the medication. So.
No, Larry's dad.
Oh, sorry, Larry's dad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
He's got to take the blood thinners. Yeah, not Larry.
Yeah. Exactly.
Larry has his own doctor.
Totally. Yeah.
I get what you mean. Yeah, no,
it's not really putting the patient's best interest at heart.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, no, it's a bad call by Larry. Bad call all around.
Yeah.
Yeah. He goes back to the home to see the doctor who's outside, and he asks about Bingo again. He also asks if a new prescription can be written up, as he disagreed with the doctor and he went with the pharmacist. Dr. S is bemused as to why Larry chose the pharmacist's advice over a doctor's, and he passively aggressively writes a new prescription. So I understand completely. Like, you've been, sure, Dr. S is like an old school kind of doctor. He might prescribe, medicines that, they're medicines that have probably been around for decades, but, there's probably more effective medicines depending on the condition. Maybe there's probably a more modern, advanced blood thinner that the pharmacist recommended, but, maybe Dr. S likes the tried and true kind of stuff. Maybe he's like, I just ordered this blood thinner because it's been around for like 30, 40 years and it does the job. So that's what I'm sticking with.
Yeah, and no doctor is going to be up to date on all current medical advancements. Like, doctors spend a lot of the time reading journals and, conferences and like finding out about new technology. So they've got the best available options when it comes to prescribing, but no doctor's going to have every new medication. They're not going to know about every new medication. So he might not even be aware of it. He might think, well, this is the best option so far.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, this to me just proves the point I raised earlier where the pharmacist has what he thinks is a better option. He should have discussed it with the doctor and they could have come to an agreement or a disagreement, or it can be raised professionally with the patient at the forefront, not just because, well, I think maybe he wanted to be a doctor and he didn't get the grades and he's a bit jaded, so he just sticks it to them every time he disagrees with them or something. It seems it's very, very like medically unethical and, unprofessional and just, it could compromise the health of the patient as well. Like, you can't
exactly.
Maybe there's some weird aspect to Larry's dad's body or diagnosis that the pharmacist doesn't know about that, would be complicated by the newer medication he's trying to push. So yeah, it's just wrong on every level.
It is. It's absolutely wrong. And I can imagine the doctor, like, I'd imagine blood thinners would be quite a common medication in the nursing home because, you have a lot of, people who like sit a lot, who lie down or in bed a lot, you got to like avoid blood clots and stuff.
Yeah.
So blood thinners, like, I can imagine Dr. S has probably prescribed this drug so many times to so many patients in the home, and he thinks there's never been any issues because you don't want a poor old person to have like a clot which travels to their heart or lungs, you know what I mean, and can basically wipe them out. So yeah, I think Dr. S, even though he's a bit old school, he likes the tried and true method.
And I think as well, like, a lot of doctors like escalate their prescriptions as well, where they maybe just start with like a basic rudimentary, just say someone is being prescribed something for pain. They might start with a more like basic or less severe form of painkiller. And then if that doesn't work, then they'll sort of up the ante. So maybe the new medication that the pharmacist is trying to push is a bit more like probably
a bit stronger.
It's stronger, yeah. And being an older person, you want to give them as little as possible to get the job done. So, it might just be, well, maybe he had that if the first prescription didn't work, then, his next option was, the newer one, which might have been a bit more targeted and a bit stronger.
Possibly, yeah. But I can imagine he's used to giving out blood thinners. It'd be quite a common medicine there. Yeah.
You just don't question a doctor's diagnosis unless you've got really good reason to.
Of course. And because the doctor knows the patient, like I said, not the pharmacist.
Yeah, he sees him probably most days and he sees him regularly. Given that he's an in-house doctor at the old folks home, yeah, you just don't do that. And he's not as qualified. Like pharmacists, and not to take anything away from pharmacists, like what they do is very important and they're extremely qualified and they're extremely
for general advice, they're fantastic.
Yeah, general advice, sure. And they probably know more about pharmacology than doctors do because that's their specialization. But in terms of overall training and diagnosis, doctors are the they're the bee's knees, so you just don't do it.
No, you don't. And Larry made a bad call,
Totally.
which could have been catastrophic for his dad.
Yeah. I mean, I keep saying that the pharmacist is the one responsible. Larry is ultimately the one who has that choice. He should have just gone with the doctor, but I think the pharmacist is equally, to even raise his disagreement is crossing a line you don't do. But yeah, Larry's the one who pushed it too far as well.
He did. Larry walks in and hears porn in the background, really, really loud. It's so loud you can even hear it in the reception area.
Yeah.
None of the it's just like booming, and none of the residents are noticing it. He's wondering where the sound is coming from, and he walks into his dad's room, and his dad is watching it on full blast as Larry turns off the TV. I love how like Larry's dad's watching it like it's like a nature documentary.
Yeah,
he's just like watching. He's like, "Shh, I'm trying to listen to this," and it's just like, like sex, those really like sensationalized, porn groans.
Yeah,
it's like, give it to me. Really put on groans.
Yeah, he's not he's not interacting with it in a sexy way. It's just
no, he's just watching
it very just like nonchalantly. I'm sure he's having a good time.
Yeah.
He wants to watch it because he's turned it up so he can hear it. So he's enjoying it, but he's not. It's not like he's got his pants around his ankles or he's like sitting up salivating or anything. He's just
I think that would have been probably a bit too far.
Totally, yeah. But I'm just saying, like, he's watching it, the same way you would watch the evening news or something.
Yeah, he's just like really into it, just trying to listen, yeah. Larry tells his dad that the bingo games are rigged and that Ruthie wins a lot of the games, and she walks in the door and sits down next to Larry's dad. Larry is trying to speak clearly for his dad. He's trying to say the word die, and he's shouting, "Die, die, die," in reference to Yoshi, as Dr. S walks past and looks on in horror. So it looks to Dr. S that Larry is saying to Ruthie, "Die, die, die."
Yeah, just case of bad timing.
Yeah, it is, yes. In the next scene, Larry is back at the pharmacist and hands in the revised script as Larry explains the situation with the doctor. He spots the pharmacist's name tag and it says Kofi. And he says, "Do you eat at the Japanese restaurant, across the road?" And Kofi says, "Yeah, I eat there all the time." And Larry decides to go with the doctor as he realizes that Kofi could have been the one who engraved his name in the restaurant table. So yeah, Larry realizes, well, he made a big mistake first of all with going to the pharmacist, but then he realizes like someone with low intelligence who carves their name in a table, they shouldn't be giving out medical advice.
Yeah, totally.
Like, how dumb are you? You must be, you must have a few screws loose.
Yeah.
So that kind of that ends that some point.
Yeah.
The Davids are eating back at the Japanese restaurant. Larry asks why Cheryl is always on her BlackBerry as he heads to the restaurant for lunch, and he tells Cheryl about the Kofi situation as Cheryl is on her phone. The chefs, as Larry's walking up, the chefs once again do a chicken dance for Larry and call him Chicken Teriyaki Boy. As a distraught Yoshi and Kev walk in, Yoshi runs out, upset. Another man named Kofi is greeted by the chefs as he walks in moments later. So we find out it's not the Kofi the pharmacist who did it. It's another guy named Kofi.
Yeah, wrong Kofi.
Wrong Kofi, yes. Bad coffee. Larry talks to Kev and he accuses Larry of calling... This is outside of the restaurant. And he accuses Larry of calling Yoshi a chicken. Larry explains that he's called Chicken Teriyaki Boy by the chefs and that's what he always orders. Cheryl walks out and she confirms that this is the case. He asks Kev for his poker money he owes as Kev asks why Larry ate nuts during his apology to Yoshi. Kev offers to go double or nothing at bingo tomorrow at the nursing home. And as Kev walks off, Cheryl receives a suicide BlackBerry on her phone. So, a suicide text. So basically what we mentioned about suicide emails before, you can insert that in texts as well.
Yeah, suicide SMS.
Yes, that's right.
An SMS.
Yes, which you don't want that. No one should ever have to write that.
No, or receive it.
Or receive, no. And in the final scene at the bingo game, Larry arrives and sits next to his dad. Everyone is staring at Larry as Kev is ready to compete against him. The game begins and gets competitive. The scene cuts to the end of the game and Larry yells, "Bingo! Bingo!" as everyone groans. A lady on another table points out that it was he who tried to kill Ruthie as the whole room glares at him. All the old people walk or stroll towards him as Larry backs out of the room. He asks Kev to back him up, but he refuses. Larry goes to the doors and is locked in the room, and he offers money as he's surrounded by old people. He spots a Kofi was here carving in the door. Yoshi's dad, Tanaka, revs his electric wheelchair as the residents make way for him. Some Japanese music plays in the background, and he screams, "Banzai!" and accelerates into Larry, Kamikaze style, and that's the end of the episode.
Yeah, good one. Good ending too.
Yeah, very good ending. Yeah, definitely. Like that's his Kamikaze mission, just going straight for Larry.
Yeah, and I mean maybe that's him like in some way regaining some of his honor that we said that maybe he felt that he dishonored throughout his life because he didn't fulfill his obligation. Maybe.
And he ran into Larry as well. So it
Yeah,
makes sense. So he's fulfilled his duty.
Yeah, and
Yoshi
hopefully
can be proud of his dad.
Exactly. Yeah, they've regained their family honor. Even though hopefully he didn't die, and hopefully Larry's okay. Yeah.
I'm sure Larry probably got knocked a little bit, but I'm sure Tanaka's fine.
I think they're both fine.
Yeah, we'll say they're both fine. Yeah, indeed. Anyway, that was Kamikaze Bingo. Very good episode, mate. Out of Larry's, I give it 4 Larry's out of 5. Really enjoyed it. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is my favorite episode of the season so far. I think the opening scene is my favorite part. Just Larry constantly pushing and probing about whether Tanaka's like a real kamikaze pilot or just a kind of a fake one or a pretend one. It was just so cringy. It was one of those times where I just thought, just shut up, Larry. Like, even though you're technically correct, just, like you don't even need to be, even if you're bad at reading social situations, anyone would be able to sense how awkward it is for Yoshi and how uncomfortable he is, but Larry just either doesn't care or he's just completely unable to read the room. I don't know, but
I just think he's just trying to figure it out. He's just like,
yeah. Like he thinks, I'm just asking questions, like it's just like, it doesn't, I'm just trying to define what happened. But yeah, Yoshi is very, very visibly uncomfortable. Cheryl's trying to sort of stop the conversation subtly, but yeah, and then the rest of the episode's good too.
Yeah, it's good. No, it's a very good episode. Actually, I've given every episode so far at least a 4, except for the Larry David sandwich. I gave that one 2.5 out of 4. So yeah, the average for each episode so far is like 3 point something, which is probably even like high 3s, which is not bad so far.
Yeah, I think probably the strongest. Like, I don't think it's the strongest episode in the first half of any season, but I think overall the first half of season 5 has probably gotten off to the strongest start compared to other seasons. Seem to ramp up and then they really pick up in the back half, whereas this seems to be
like we saw last season in season 4. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Whereas this one seems to be coming out a bit stronger.
Yeah, no, it's excellent. Very good episode, Kamikaze Bingo, and we're looking forward to next week, Steve. We're going to be halfway through season 5. Lewis needs a kidney.
Lewis needs a kidney.
That's right. Thank you so much for listening. Really appreciate it. That was another episode of Curbcast. You can send us an email if you want to talk about the episode, about Curb, or anything else in general within reason. Be sure to send us an email, curbcastpod@gmail.com. We do have social media. You can find us at CurbcastPod. That's all one word. And we do have a Patreon page where you can support our burgeoning podcast network, Mishmash Media. Unfortunately, we can't provide you with any bonus content at this stage, so we are only asking if you do wish to pledge to our Patreon page, only for $1 a month, just to get the ball going. And we'll eventually do some more tiers with some more content as we go along. But anyway, my name's Ivan.
And I'm Stephen.
And we'll catch you next week for Lewis Needs a Kidney, and we'll be about halfway through the season. You take care of yourselves and each other. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. This podcast is part of Mishmash Media, an independent podcast network. Follow us on social media at Mishmash Media AU or support us on Patreon. All those links are in the show notes.